Frank Drummond learned the news over meatloaf. His wife of 30 years set down her fork, pushed the divorce papers across the kitchen table, right next to the salt shaker his mother had given them, and said it plain as ordering coffee. "I'm getting my tubes untied. Travis wants children." Outside, the first snow of December was starting to fall. The refrigerator hummed. Frank sat there with his fork halfway to his mouth, the meatloaf going cold on his plate. "Travis," he said, "my ex-boyfriend. He's moving into the guest room tonight." She went back to scrolling her phone like she'd just mentioned picking up milk. Frank was 68 years old. He'd survived Korea, survived his father, survived 42 years in a machine shop that ate men's hearing and hope. But he'd never felt a blow quite like this one. And that was only the beginning. Frank had been in his workshop that morning, same as every morning for the past 20 years. The space heater hummed in the corner, throwing orange light across the concrete floor. His transistor radio played low, AM 640, classic country, same station since 1987. The coffee in his Marine Corps mug was still hot. He'd been working on the Mustang's carburetor, the 67 he'd been restoring for a decade now. Every piece laid out on the workbench in perfect order, each one exactly 2 inches from the next. 42 years in a machine shop taught you that precision wasn't optional. The cold December air coming under the door smelled like snow. Frank had checked the weather that morning, storm moving in by afternoon. He'd need to fill the propane tank before it hit. Linda hadn't joined him for morning coffee in 6 weeks. He'd noticed. Course he had. But some things you don't push. Some things work themselves out if you give them space. That's what he'd told himself anyway. At noon, he'd gone inside to make lunch. Found her at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, papers spread out in front of her. She'd made meatloaf the night before. His favorite, or used to be. She heated it up without a word, set his plate down, sat across from him. "I've got something to tell you, Frank." He'd looked up then, really looked at her. Linda was 52, hair still dark except for the gray at her temples she'd stopped covering 6 months back. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Okay," he'd said. That's when she slid the papers across. Divorce petition. His name typed there in black and white. Filed 3 days ago. He hadn't even known. "I'm getting my tubes untied," she said, matter of fact. "Travis wants children, real children, not your cold shoulder for 30 years. The words landed like a wrench to the skull. "Travis? My ex-boyfriend from before we met. He's been back in my life for a while now. He's moving into the guest room tonight." Frank set his fork down carefully. His hands wanted to shake, but he wouldn't let them. "When did you decide this?" "Does it matter?" She was scrolling her phone again. "I've already moved $47,000 from our joint account to cover the medical expenses. Pete Garrison's office has your copy of the papers." $47,000. Their savings. Gone. "That's our retirement money," he said, and his voice came out quieter than he meant it to. "It's my money too, Frank. I earned it sitting in that bank for 20 years while you hid in your workshop." The refrigerator hummed. Outside, snow was starting to stick to the driveway. Frank could see it through the kitchen window, white against the gray gravel. "We should talk about this," he said. "We could see someone. A counselor, maybe?" Linda laughed. Short, hard, nothing funny in it. "I'm done talking, Frank. I've been talking to walls for 30 years. Travis actually listens." She stood up, took her plate to the sink. The water ran. Frank sat there looking at the divorce papers, at his name, at the signatures already on them. Linda's handwriting, some lawyer's scrawl. "Guest room?" he said. "Tonight. He'll be here around 7. She left the kitchen. Frank heard her footsteps going upstairs, heard the bedroom door close. Not slam, just close, like it was already decided, like 30 years could end over meatloaf and a closed door. He looked down at his plate. The food had gone cold. The salt shaker sat there, ceramic, hand-painted, his mother's gift from their 10th anniversary. His mother had been gone 12 years now. She'd loved Linda, loved her like a daughter. Frank pushed back from the table. His knee popped, the same knee that had gone bad in '03 from kneeling on concrete 40 hours a week. He walked to the window, looked out at his workshop. The light was still on. He could see the Mustang's shape under the tarp, the workbench, the space heater's glow. The first snow was falling harder now. Frank put on his coat, the heavy canvas one with the ripped pocket he'd been meaning to fix, and walked back out to the workshop. The cold hit him like a fist. His breath made clouds. Inside, he sat on his stool. The carburetor parts were still laid out. He picked one up, the float valve, tiny thing, precision machined. He turned it over in his hands. 30 years. The propane tank outside was down to a quarter full. He should fill it. Storm coming. He'd need heat if he was sleeping out here tonight. When. Frank set the valve back down, not quite in the right spot. 2¼ inches from the next piece instead of 2. He stared at it. Outside, the wind picked up. The workshop's sheet metal walls rattled. The radio played something he didn't recognize. He reached over, turned it off. The silence was worse. Travis arrived at 7:15 in a black BMW with vanity plates that read, LVN Life. Bulls. Frank watched from the workshop window as the headlights cut through the snow, as the car took his spot, the spot he'd parked in for 20 years. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a man, maybe 38, 40 at most, gym-built shoulders under a leather jacket, spray tan in December, hair gelled back like he was posing for something. Linda came out to meet him. Frank watched her smile, really smile, the way she used to smile at him back when Carter was president. Travis put his arm around her waist, pulled her close, kissed her right there in the driveway while snow fell on them both. Frank looked away. He didn't go inside that night. Slept on the cot he kept for long restoration projects, the space heater running on what was left in the propane tank. The orange glow kept one side of him warm, the other side stayed cold. Morning came gray and frozen. Frank made instant coffee on the hot plate, used the last of the creamer he kept in the mini fridge. Through the window, he could see the house. Travis's BMW was still there, covered in 4 inches of fresh snow. Nobody'd cleared the driveway. Frank got the shovel from the workshop corner. His back complained, but he ignored it. Started at the street, worked his way up. The snow was heavy, wet, good packing snow, the kind he and Linda used to build snowmen in when Amy was little. He was halfway done when the front door opened. Travis came out in a bathrobe. Frank's bathrobe, the blue terry cloth one Linda had given him for Christmas 5 years back. "Hey, Pops," Travis called out. "You doing the whole driveway?" Frank kept shoveling. "Need you to clear around the Beamer, too. Got an appointment at 10. Frank straightened up. His lower back seized, but he didn't let it show. "Name's Frank." Travis grinned. "Right, Frank. So you got it? The car? Get your own shovel. Come on, man. Linda said you'd help out. We're all going to be living together here, right? Got to be neighborly." The word neighborly came out like a joke. Travis was still grinning, hands in the bathrobe pockets, barefoot on the front step like the cold didn't touch him. Frank went back to shoveling, did the whole driveway, even the turnaround, didn't touch the BMW. That afternoon, Linda called him. He was back in the workshop, trying to focus on the carburetor, when his phone buzzed. "Frank, you need to be reasonable about this." "About what?" "About Travis, about the situation. He's going to be here, and you're going to have to accept that." "I don't have to accept anything. The house is half mine, Frank, legally. Pete Garrison confirmed it. I can have whoever I want in the guest room." Frank looked out at the house. He could see Travis through the kitchen window making himself something at the stove, using Frank's cast iron skillet, the one Frank had seasoned for 15 years. "What about Amy?" Frank said. "You tell her yet?" Silence on the line. "Amy doesn't need to know everything right now." "She's going to find out, Linda. Better from you than from town gossip." "You don't get to tell me how to talk to my daughter." "Our daughter." "When's the last time you called her, Frank? When's the last time you drove out to see your grandson? You've been absent for years. Don't pretend you care now." The line went dead. Frank set the phone down. His hands were shaking now, actually shaking. He made fists, relaxed them, made fists again. The workshop door opened. Cold air rushed in. It was Martha Hendricks from next door. 72, widow, had lived in the yellow house 50 yards down since before Frank moved in. She was holding a casserole dish wrapped in a kitchen towel. "Brought you dinner," she said. "Saw you sleeping out here last night. Light was on till past midnight." "You didn't have to do that." "I know I didn't." She came in, set the dish on the workbench. "Chicken and rice. Still hot." Martha looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Her husband had died 3 years back. Alzheimer's, slow and mean. She knew what loss looked like. "Thank you," Frank said. "That his car in your spot?" Frank nodded. "Saw him come in last night. Saw Linda too." Martha's mouth was a thin line. "None of my business, Frank, but I've been watching men like you disappear for 40 years. You need anything, you knock on my door. Don't care what time it is." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "One more thing. That boy, Travis, Linda called him. I've seen that car before. 2 towns over, last spring, parked at Jim Henderson's place right before his wife filed." "Jim Henderson?" "Divorced now, Lost half of everything. Word is the new boyfriend took off once the money cleared. Martha pulled her coat tighter. Just saying, keep your eyes open. She left. The casserole steamed on the workbench. Frank ate it standing up, looking out the window at his own house, where a stranger wore his bathrobe and cooked with his skillet and slept under his roof. The food was good. He couldn't taste it. Wednesday came. Poker night at Jerry Kowalski's place. Same group for 15 years. Frank almost didn't go. But the workshop walls were closing in, and he needed to see friendly faces. He drove through fresh snow, the truck's heater barely working. Jerry's house was lit up warm, cars already in the driveway. Frank parked on the street, walked up the shoveled path. Inside, everyone was already at the table. Tom, Jerry, Mike, Ed, Paul, men he'd known since Amy was in grade school. Frank, Jerry said, standing up too quick. Didn't know if you were coming. Wouldn't miss it. But the table felt different. Tom dealt the cards, but nobody was talking like they usually did. No jokes about the Colts, no complaints about property taxes. Just quiet shuffling, quiet betting. Frank picked up his hand. Pair of fives. So, he said, Jerry, how's the furnace holding up? You said last week it was acting funny. Fixed it, Jerry said. Wasn't nothing. Silence. Mike, your grandson's still playing basketball? Yeah, he's doing good. More silence. They played 3 hands like that. Conversation dying before it started, everyone looking at their cards too hard. Finally, Paul cleared his throat. Frank, listen, we heard about... Heard about what? Frank said. Paul glanced at the others. About Linda and the situation. What situation would that be? Come on, man. Small town. People talk. Frank folded his hand, stood up. His chair scraped loud on the linoleum. I'm good, he said. Thanks for the game. Frank, wait. But he was already at the door. Behind him, he heard Jerry say something low. Heard Tom respond. Couldn't make out the words. Didn't need to. In the parking lot, Ed caught up to him. Snow was falling again, quiet and steady. We're sorry, Frank. We didn't know what to say. Frank looked at his friend. 30 years they'd known each other. Their kids had played together. They'd helped each other move furniture, fix cars, bury parents. Nothing to say, Frank told him. I'm fine. You're not fine. I'll be fine. Ed put a hand on Frank's shoulder. You need anything? I know, I got it. Frank drove home in silence. No radio. Just the sound of snow hitting the windshield, the wipers scraping back and forth. When he pulled up to the house, every light was on. Through the kitchen window he could see them, Linda and Travis at the table, laughing about something, Travis reaching over to touch her hand. Frank parked on the street again, walked to the workshop. The propane tank was almost empty. He'd forgotten to fill it. Inside, he turned on the space heater anyway. The flame was weak, wouldn't last the night. He sat on his stool in his coat and looked at the carburetor parts still spread on the bench. Still, not in the right order. He couldn't remember what came next. 42 years, working with his hands, and he couldn't remember the sequence. Frank put his head in his hands. The space heater clicked off. Out of fuel. The cold woke him before dawn. Frank's breath made clouds in the workshop, and his back was a solid sheet of pain from the cot. He was 68 years old and sleeping in a workshop in December because his own house had been taken from him. He made coffee on the hot plate, instant, no creamer left, and watched the sun come up gray behind the trees. His phone rang. Pete Garrison, his lawyer. Frank, got a minute? Yeah. Looked over Linda's filing? I think we can work with this. Pete's voice had that practiced, calm lawyers use. Truth is, this looks like a midlife crisis with a ticking clock. She's 52, probably panicking about aging. Happens more than you'd think. She moved $47,000, Pete. From a joint account? Technically legal, but we can argue improper depletion of marital assets. Judge will make her put half back. We'll get a temporary restraining order on the accounts, freeze everything until the divorce is final. Frank listened. Outside, a cardinal landed on the fence post, bright red against white snow. How long does this take? 6 months, maybe. Year if she fights. But Frank, listen. Give her space. Let her cool down. Women her age, sometimes they just need to feel wanted again. This Travis character? He'll get bored. She'll realize what she had. I've seen it a dozen times. You think she'll come back? I think there's a good chance this blows over. You've been married 30 years. That counts for something. Frank wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe Pete knew what he was talking about. What do I do? Nothing aggressive. Be available. Fix things around the house. Show her you care. And for God's sake, don't start a fight with this Travis person. That'll just push her further away. They talked for 10 more minutes. Paperwork, court dates, filing fees. When Frank hung up, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 days. Possibility. Maybe Pete was right. Maybe this was just Linda panicking. Maybe if he gave her space, showed her he wasn't going to fight, she'd remember 30 years together. Frank looked at the house. Early morning, lights still off. Maybe she was awake, lying there regretting everything. Maybe she was waiting for him to show up, show he cared. He spent the morning fixing things. The bedroom door that squeaked, he'd been meaning to oil it for months. Did it now, careful and quiet, while Travis snored in the guest room. The loose cabinet handle in the kitchen, the drip under the bathroom sink. Linda came downstairs around 10, found him under the sink with a wrench. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the leak. Been meaning to get to it." She stood there in her bathrobe, her own, not Travis's. Her hair was down. She looked tired. "You didn't have to do that," she said, and her voice was softer than it had been in days. "I know." Frank tightened the connection, tested it, but it was dripping, wasting water. He climbed out, wiped his hands on his jeans. Linda was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, but not in an angry way, more like she was thinking about something. "Frank, I got you something." He pulled a small bag from his coat pocket. "Caramel creams from Myers Drugstore. I know they're your favorite." She took the bag, looked at it. For a second, just a second, her face softened. "Thank you." "Linda, I know things haven't been good. I know I've been distant, working too much, not around enough." The words came hard, but he pushed through. "But we could fix this. We could talk to someone. Whatever you need, I'll do it." She was quiet for a long time. Frank waited. The kitchen was warm. The fixed faucet wasn't dripping. Outside, the snow was melting in patches where the sun hit. "I'll think about it," she finally said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. "There's a counselor," Frank said. "Dr. Patterson, over in Bloomfield. Pete mentioned her. We could go together. Just talk." "Maybe." Travis came downstairs then, yawning, still wearing Frank's bathrobe. "Morning, babe," he said to Linda, kissing her cheek. He noticed Frank. "Oh, Pops is here." Linda stepped away from Frank. The softness in her face closed up like a door. "Frank was just leaving," she said. "Actually," Frank said, "I thought maybe we could talk. The three of us. About the situation." Travis laughed. "The situation? Man, there's no situation. Linda's made her choice. You're the past. I'm the future." He opened the fridge, grabbed the orange juice, the expensive kind Frank bought, and drank straight from the carton. "No offense, but maybe it's time you accepted that." "Travis," Linda said, but she didn't sound angry. She sounded embarrassed. For Frank. "What?" Travis said. "I'm just being honest. Guys gotta face reality sometime." Frank looked at Linda, waited for her to say something, to tell Travis to back off, to remember 30 years should count for something. She looked away. "I should go," Frank said. "Good idea," Travis said. "Oh, and while you're out, we need the driveway cleared again. Supposed to snow tonight." Frank left through the back door. He walked to the workshop, his jaw so tight his teeth hurt. Inside, he stood at the workbench and looked at the carburetor parts he still couldn't put back together. That evening, he drove to the steakhouse on Route 9, the Cattleman's Grill, where he'd taken Linda for their 10th anniversary, where they'd celebrated Amy's college acceptance, where things used to be good. He'd called ahead, made a reservation, called Linda too, asked her to meet him. She'd agreed. Maybe the talk that morning had worked. Maybe she'd thought about it and realized. Frank got there at 6, requested their old table, the booth in the back corner with the view of the woods. He ordered coffee, waited. Linda arrived at 6:20. She was wearing the blue dress he'd bought her last Christmas. She'd done her hair. "Hi," she said, sliding into the booth. "Hi, thanks for coming." "Frank, just hear me out, please." He reached across the table, but didn't quite touch her hand. "I know I haven't been the husband you needed. I know I work too much, don't talk enough. My father was the same way, and I swore I wouldn't be, but here we are." He took a breath. "But I love you, Linda. 30 years. That has to mean something." Her eyes were wet. She opened her mouth to say something. The door opened. Travis walked in. He came straight to their table, pulled up a chair, sat down next to Linda like he'd been invited. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, grinning. Linda told me about dinner. Thought I should come meet the ex-husband properly. Frank looked at Linda. You told him? He asked where I was going. And you brought him? Actually, Travis said, I drove separately. Figured you two might want some alone time first, but now seems like a good moment to talk about next steps. He pulled papers from his jacket pocket, spread them on the table. Property settlement. Linda wants the house, obviously, and your pension. And that old car you've been working on, the Mustang, right? It's a classic. We could sell it, split the money. Frank's vision tunneled. The restaurant sounds, silverware, conversations, kitchen clatter, all faded to white noise. The Mustang, he said quietly. Hey, Pops, I get it. Sentimental value and all, but look at it practically. You're 68. How many years you got left to enjoy it? Linda's got a whole life ahead. It's only fair. Brew. Other diners were watching now. The teenage hostess, Emma, who babysat for Amy's kid, was pretending to organize menus, but Frank could see her staring. Linda, Frank said, is this what you want? She looked at the table, at her water glass, anywhere but at him. I think it's fair, she said. Frank stood up, his knee popped, his hands were shaking again, and this time he couldn't stop them. 30 years, he said, and you bring him to this restaurant. Frank, don't make a scene. I'm not making anything. He pulled $40 from his wallet, enough for her meal and his coffee, and put it on the table. I hope you're happy, Linda. I really do. He walked out through a restaurant that had gone quiet. Behind him he heard Travis laugh and say something to Linda, heard her respond, couldn't make out the words. In the parking lot, snow had started falling. Frank sat in his truck, hands on the steering wheel, engine running. Through the frost-covered window he could see them in there, Linda and Travis at the table, looking at the papers, planning the division of everything Frank had built. He drove home, parked on the street again. Travis's BMW was in his spot, covered in fresh snow. Frank walked to the workshop. No propane left. He'd have to fill the tank tomorrow. Tonight, he'd sleep in his coat. The space heater wouldn't run, but he had the cot, had his blanket. He lay there in the dark, in the cold, listening to the wind rattle the sheet metal walls. Through the thin walls, through the 50 yards between workshop and house, he could hear them. Music playing, Linda laughing, Travis's voice, loud and confident. Frank closed his eyes. Pete had said give her space, said she'd come around. Frank didn't believe it anymore. Travis moved his things in the next day. Not just a suitcase. Everything. Boxes of clothes, a flat-screen TV, a weight bench that took up half the living room. Frank watched from the workshop window as Travis directed Linda like she was hired help. No, babe. The TV goes on that wall. Yeah, there. Perfect. Frank needed propane, needed groceries, needed to stop hiding in his own workshop like a trespasser. He got in his truck, drove to town. At the bank, Roy Clemens was behind the counter. 55, church deacon, mortgage holder. They'd served on the building committee together 3 years back. Frank, Roy said, and something in his voice made Frank stop. What is it? Roy looked around the empty lobby, lowered his voice. Can we talk in my office? They went back. Roy closed the door, sat behind his desk. He had that look people get when they're about to tell you someone died. There have been some transactions on your joint account. I know about the $47,000. There's more. Roy pulled up a screen, turned the monitor. 3 wire transfers this week, $23,000 Monday, $31,000 Wednesday. Today, another $42,000. The numbers didn't make sense. Frank leaned forward, read them again. That's $96,000 in 4 days. Total with the first transfer, you're at $143,000. I didn't authorize those. Linda did. Joint account, Frank. Both signatures have equal authority. Frank sat back. The chair creaked. Outside Roy's office, the bank hummed with ordinary business. People depositing checks, withdrawing cash, living normal lives. How much is left? Roy looked at the screen. In savings? About $7,000. Your checking account has $1,800. Your truck's paid off, that's good, but there's something else. He pulled papers from a drawer. Home equity line of credit, opened Monday, $89,000 drawn against the house. I didn't sign that. Linda did, and there's a second signature here. Roy pushed the paper across. Travis Vreeland. Frank looked at the signature, looked at his own name typed underneath as co-applicant. That's not my signature. Roy was quiet. His wedding ring caught the fluorescent light. He twisted it around and around. Roy, that's not my signature. I know, Roy said quietly. You know? Frank, I can't. Look, there's regulations. If I flag this as fraud, it triggers an investigation, federal. Your accounts get frozen. Linda's too. Everything stops while they sort it out. That could take months. So what am I supposed to do? Roy's face was miserable. Pete Garrison's your lawyer, right? Talk to him. Get a court order. That's the proper way. Frank stood up. His knee didn't pop this time. He was too angry to feel it. How long have we known each other, Roy? Long time. Our kids played together. I know. And you're telling me to wait for a court order while my wife and her boyfriend steal everything I've got? Roy couldn't look at him. I'm sorry, Frank. I really am, but my hands are tied. Frank left without another word, drove straight to Pete Garrison's office. Pete listened to everything, took notes, nodded in the right places. Forged signature on the HELOC. That's fraud. We can file charges. But, Frank, I gotta be honest with you, this is gonna get expensive. We're talking forensic handwriting, analysis, depositions, court time, easily 20, 30,000 in legal fees, maybe more. I don't have 30,000. I've got 7,000 in savings and 1,800 in checking. Pete set down his pen. Then we need to think practically here. You're 68. How many years you got left to work to earn this back? So I should just let them take it. I'm saying fighting this could cost more than surrendering. The house is marital property. She's entitled to half anyway. The pension, same thing. You fight, you spend everything you've got left, and maybe you win. Maybe. But probably you just go broke trying. Frank looked at the law books on Pete's shelf, the diplomas on the wall, the old ficus plant in the corner that was slowly dying. What do you suggest? Take the settlement. Keep your dignity. Walk away with something rather than nothing. My dignity. It's not nothing, Frank. Frank left, drove home through town, past the diner, Janice waving through the window, but he didn't wave back. Past the church, Reverend Patterson on the front steps. Frank didn't slow down. Past the feed store where he'd bought supplies for 20 years. Small town, everyone knew by now. At home, Travis's BMW was gone. Linda's car too. Frank went inside. His own house, he could still go inside. And found the guest room transformed. Travis's clothes in the closet, his cologne on the dresser, a framed photo on the nightstand. Linda and Travis at some restaurant laughing. In the bathroom, Frank's toothbrush was gone. His razor. His blood pressure medication had been moved to the cabinet under the sink, behind the cleaning supplies. He went downstairs, the kitchen table. His mother's salt shaker was gone. In its place, a succulent in a modern planter. Frank checked the cabinets. His Marine Corps mug wasn't in its usual spot. He found it in the dishwasher, still dirty from whoever used it last. There was lipstick on the rim. He washed it, dried it, took it back to the workshop. That night, he couldn't sleep. The workshop was too cold. His back hurt too much. His mind wouldn't stop running numbers. 43 years of paychecks, overtime, skipped vacations, gone in a week. He got up, turned on the light, looked at the carburetor spread across the workbench. He couldn't remember what came next. 42 years working with his hands, and he couldn't remember the sequence. The float valve connected to, what? The needle seat? The accelerator pump? It was all jumbled in his head. Frank tried anyway. Picked up pieces, tried to fit them together. Wrong. Tried again. Wrong. His hands were shaking. He set the pieces down, sat on his stool, put his head in his hands. The workshop door opened. Cold air rushed in. Martha Hendricks stood there in her coat, snow in her hair. Saw your light on, she said. It's 2 a.m, Frank. Couldn't sleep. She came in, looked at the carburetor pieces. You working on this? Trying to. When's the last time you ate something? Frank couldn't remember. Martha shook her head. Come on, I got leftover pot roast. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're sitting in a freezing workshop at 2 a.m. trying to work on a car you can't finish. That's not fine. She waited. Frank didn't move. Frank Drummond, I've known you 20 years. I watched you bury your mother. I watched you raise a daughter by yourself half the time because Linda was always busy. I watched you work doubles to pay for Amy's college, and I'll be damned if I watch you disappear now. Something in her voice, steel under the kindness, made Frank look up. I don't know what to do, he said, and it came out more honest than he meant it to. First thing, you eat. Second thing, you sleep somewhere warm. Third thing, tomorrow we figure out what's really going on here. What do you mean? Martha's eyes were sharp. That boy, Travis. I've seen his car before. I told you. Jim Henderson, 2 towns over. I made some calls. Jim lost $160,000 before he wised up. And you know what? Same story. Girlfriend's ex-boyfriend shows up, moves in, starts draining accounts. Frank felt something shift in his chest. You think this is a pattern? I think that boy's a professional, and I think Linda's either being conned or she's in on it. The words hung there. Come on, Martha said. Pot roast's getting cold. Frank followed her across the yard to her house. Inside, it was warm. Yellow light, clean counters, the smell of coffee already brewing for morning. She heated up the food, set a plate in front of him. Frank ate without tasting it, but his body remembered it needed fuel. I'll make some calls tomorrow, Martha said. I know a woman in the county clerk's office. We'll see what we can find on this Travis character. Martha, you don't have to... 40 years, I've been watching men like you get taken advantage of. My Harold. They drained his accounts while I was frozen out because I wasn't family. His nephew took everything, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. Had to watch my husband's money disappear while he didn't even know his own name anymore. Her voice was fierce now. I swore I wouldn't stand by and watch it happen again. Not to you, not to anyone. Frank looked at this woman, widow, retired teacher, 72 years old, and saw someone who'd decided to fight. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we've got your money back. She made up the spare room, clean sheets, extra blankets. Frank hadn't slept in a real bed in a week. He lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle. Through the window he could see his workshop, dark now. Could see his own house beyond it, lights still on. Tomorrow he'd call Pete again. Tomorrow he'd figure out the next move. Tonight, at least, he was warm. Frank woke to daylight and the smell of coffee. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then it came back. Martha's spare room. He'd slept in a stranger's house because his own was taken. He got dressed, same clothes as yesterday, same coat with the ripped pocket, and went downstairs. Martha was at the kitchen table with a laptop and a notebook. She looked up when he came in. Coffee's fresh. Eggs are in the pan if you want some. You didn't have to... Sit down, Frank. Eat. He did. The eggs were good. Real butter, not margarine. Toast with homemade jam. Frank ate slowly, watching Martha type. What are you doing? Research. She turned the laptop so he could see. Travis Vreeland. That's what he's calling himself now. But look. She clicked to another tab. Connor Vreeland. Same face, different name. 3 bankruptcies, restraining order in Tennessee, another in Florida. And look at this. A news article from 2 years back. Local man arrested for romance fraud. Connor Vreeland, 36, accused of targeting elderly widows through dating websites. That's him, Frank said. That's him. Case got dismissed on a technicality. But the pattern's there, Frank. He finds women with money, or married to men with money, and he bleeds them dry. Frank set down his fork. His appetite was gone. So Linda's a victim too. Martha was quiet for a moment. Maybe. Or maybe she knew what she was getting into. She wouldn't... Frank. Martha's voice was gentle but firm. How long's she been acting different? 6 months? A year? Frank thought about it. Linda pulling away, missing coffee mornings, being gone on errands that took too long. About 18 months. And when did Travis show up? 3 months ago. She said he just came back into her life. Martha clicked to another tab. I found their social media. They've been posting pictures together for 16 months. Here, them at a casino in Michigan. That's a year and a half ago. The photo showed Linda and Travis at a blackjack table. She was laughing, holding chips. He had his arm around her. Frank stared at it. She said he just showed up. She lied, Frank. The words sat there between them like something broken. There's more, Martha said quietly. She pulled out a manila folder, opened it. Papers inside, printouts, handwritten notes. I called my friend at the courthouse. Linda opened a business account 14 months ago. Something called Renewal Life Coaching LLC. Well, guess who the co-signer is? Frank didn't need to guess. They've been planning this? Looks like it. Frank stood up. His knee popped. He walked to the window, looked out at his house. The BMW was back in his spot, smoke coming from the chimney. They'd started a fire with wood he'd cut and stacked last fall. What do? We gather evidence, we build a case, and we take it to the police. Pete Garrison's a good man, but he's old school. He thinks divorce court and mediation. This isn't divorce, Frank. This is fraud. This is theft. We go to the police, not the lawyers. Frank turned back. You really think they'll listen? I think when we show them everything I've found, yeah, they'll listen. Martha poured herself more coffee, gestured for Frank to sit back down. My Harold, she said. When his nephew started taking advantage, I didn't know what to do. I was 70 years old, alone, scared. I let it happen because I didn't think I had any power. She looked at Frank. Whoa. But I learned something. You've got more power than you think. You just have to be willing to use it. Frank sat down, looked at the folder, at the evidence Martha had compiled in one night. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because someone should have done it for me. Because you're a good man who doesn't deserve this. And because, she smiled, sad but determined, because Harold would have wanted me to. He always said, stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Well, Frank, right now that's you, but it won't be for long. They spent the morning going through everything. Bank statements Frank had from before the transfers, the forged signature on the HELOC, the fake business Martha had uncovered, the pattern of Travis's previous cons. At noon, Frank said he needed to go to the workshop. Martha nodded. Take some time. Process this, but Frank, don't disappear. We've got work to do. Frank crossed the yard. Inside the workshop, it was cold, but not freezing. The winter sun came through the dirty window, pale and weak. He looked at the Mustang under its tarp, the carburetor pieces still scattered across the workbench. He couldn't fix the carburetor, couldn't remember the sequence, but he could do other things. Frank pulled the tarp off the Mustang. Dust rose in the sunlight. He opened the hood, looked at the engine bay. 9 years he'd been working on this car, 9 years of slow, careful restoration. They wanted to sell it, divide the money like it was just another asset. Frank closed the hood, locked it, took the keys off the pegboard and put them in his pocket. Then he started gathering his tools. Not all of them, he didn't want to be obvious. But the expensive ones. The socket set his father had left him. The torque wrench, the precision measuring tools. He wrapped them in old towels, carried them to Martha's garage, made 3 trips each time he looked at the house. Nobody watching. Linda's car was gone. Travis's BMW was there, but the curtains were drawn. By mid-afternoon, Frank had moved everything that mattered. What was left in the workshop looked the same, just different tools in the same spots. Only he would know the difference. It was a small thing, a tiny act of protection, but it was something. That evening, Linda called. Frank, we need to talk about property division. I'm listening. Travis and I have been discussing it. We think the fairest thing is, the Mustang's not for sale. Silence on the line. Frank, be reasonable. It's just a car. It's not just a car. It's 9 years of work. He stopped himself. She wouldn't understand. Had never understood why he spent hours in the workshop, why he needed a project, why some things mattered beyond their dollar value. It's worth at least $20,000, Linda said. We could really use that money for... No, you're being selfish. Maybe I am. Fine. Her voice went cold. Keep the car, but we're taking the house and the pension. Pete has the papers. You need to sign them. I'll think about it. Don't think too long, Frank. The longer you drag this out, the more expensive it gets for everyone. She hung up. Frank sat in Martha's living room. Through the window he could see his house. His and not his. Could see the lights coming on as evening fell. Martha came in from the kitchen. You doing okay? I moved my tools, Frank said. The important ones. They're in your garage now. Martha smiled. Good. That's good. Small steps, Frank. We protect what we can, then we take back the rest. What if we can't? Then we hurt them trying. Frank looked at her. This woman who'd lost her husband, lost her savings, lost everything to her husband's nephew, and couldn't do anything about it. This woman who'd turned that pain into fierce protection for someone else. Thank you, Martha. Don't thank me yet, she said. Tomorrow we go to the police. That's when the real work starts. That night, Frank slept in Martha's spare room again. Through the wall, he could hear her moving around, making phone calls, typing on the laptop. She was gathering an army of one, waging a war Frank hadn't known he could fight. In the morning, everything would change. But tonight, Frank had his tools safe, had the Mustang keys in his pocket, had one person in his corner. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had yesterday. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. Frank sat in a plastic chair while Martha talked to the desk sergeant, her manila folder open on the counter. We have evidence of financial fraud, she was saying. Forged signatures, identity theft, a pattern of... Ma'am, this sounds like a civil matter. You need to talk to a lawyer, not us. It's not civil when someone forges a signature on an $89,000 loan. The sergeant, young guy, maybe 30, looked tired. Is your husband here to file the complaint? He's not my husband. He's my neighbor. And yes, he's right here. The sergeant looked at Frank. Sir, did you authorize the home equity line? No. Can you prove the signature's not yours? I can look at it and tell you it's not mine. We'd need a handwriting expert for that. And even then, the sergeant shrugged. These things usually get sorted out in divorce court. We don't have the resources to investigate every domestic financial dispute. Martha's jaw tightened. So he's just supposed to let them steal everything? I'm saying this is probably better handled through your attorney. They left with nothing, drove back to Martha's house in silence. Inside, she made tea neither of them wanted. We'll find another way, she said, but Frank could hear the frustration in her voice. His phone rang, Amy's number. His daughter, who he hadn't talked to in 5 years. Dad? Amy, hi. I got a letter. Her voice was shaky. Anonymous. Someone sent me copies of bank statements. Mom's been transferring money, a lot of money. What's going on? Frank looked at Martha. She'd turned away, suddenly very interested in the tea kettle. Your mother and I are getting divorced. The letter says there's fraud, says someone's stealing from you. It's complicated. I'm coming home. Not a question, a statement. Amy, you don't need to... I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. We'll talk then. She hung up before he could argue. You sent her a letter, Frank said to Martha. Someone had to tell her. That wasn't your place. Martha turned, eyes fierce. Your daughter has a right to know her inheritance is being stolen. You weren't going to tell her. Someone had to. Frank wanted to be angry. Couldn't find it. Maybe Martha was right. That afternoon, Travis showed up at Martha's door. Frank watched through the window as he knocked, waited, knocked again. Martha opened it but didn't invite him in. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for Frank. His truck's here. He's busy. Look, lady, I just need 5 minutes. We got papers he needs to sign. He'll sign them when he's ready. Travis's smile went thin. This is between Frank and Linda. You should stay out of it. Maybe you should stay out of Frank's house. It's Linda's house too, legally, but I guess you wouldn't know about legal things, would you? He looked past her, saw Frank standing in the living room. There you are. Come on, let's talk like men. Frank came to the door. I'm not signing anything. Pete Garrison says you're being unreasonable. Says you're dragging this out on purpose. Pete works for me, not you. Actually, Travis pulled out his phone, showed Frank the screen, an email from Pete Garrison. Pete's been keeping us updated. He thinks you're having some kind of breakdown, says you're not thinking clearly. Frank read the email, Pete describing Frank as emotionally unstable, suggesting Linda should proceed with caution, recommending they expedite the settlement before Frank makes this harder on everyone. His own lawyer, talking about him like he was a problem to solve. You need to leave, Martha said. Travis ignored her. Here's the deal, Frank. Sign the papers, you keep the pension. Fight us. Linda goes after all of it. Your choice. Get off her property. Or what? You gonna hit me? Go ahead. I'll have you arrested for assault. Then Linda gets everything by default. Travis grinned. Face it, old man. You've already lost. This is just about how much more you want to lose. He left. The BMW kicked up gravel as he drove away. Frank called Pete, got voicemail, left a message, called again an hour later. Same thing. At 5 o'clock, Pete finally called back. Frank, I think we need to have a conversation about realistic expectations. You've been talking to Travis. Silence. He's Linda's representative. I have to communicate with, you work for me, Pete. And I'm trying to help you, but you're making this impossible. Every day you delay, legal fees go up for everyone. Linda's prepared to fight. Are you? Frank hung up. That night, he couldn't eat, sat at Martha's kitchen table while she heated soup he didn't touch. Your lawyer's compromised, she said. I know. We need someone else. I can't afford someone else. The walls felt like they were closing in. The police wouldn't help. His lawyer was working with Travis. Amy was coming tomorrow, and he'd have to tell her everything. Tell her he'd failed to protect anything. Tell her he was losing the house, the money, everything. Frank stood up. I need air. He walked to the workshop. Inside, it felt empty with his tools gone. The Mustang sat under fresh tarp he'd put back to hide that he'd been there. He sat on the stool, put his head in his hands. The door opened. Martha again. I won't let them do this, she said. You can't stop them. Maybe not, but I can make them hurt while they do it. She came closer. Tomorrow, Amy arrives. Day after that, I've got a meeting with a reporter friend of mine. Human interest story. Local man defrauded by wife and boyfriend. People eat that up. That's private. Privacy won't save you. Publicity might. Frank looked at her, this woman fighting battles he'd already surrendered. Why won't you give up on this? Because I gave up once before, Martha said quietly. Watched them take everything from Harold while I stood there helpless. I won't watch it happen again. She left him alone. Frank sat in the cold workshop, in the dark, and made a choice he couldn't take back. Tomorrow, Amy would arrive. He'd tell her everything. Then he'd do what Martha suggested. He'd fight dirty. Because clean fighting hadn't worked. Amy arrived on a Tuesday morning, snow falling heavy and wet. Frank watched from Martha's window as the rental car pulled up, Colorado plates, his daughter behind the wheel. She'd changed. 42 now, hair shorter than he remembered, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. She got out, looked at Martha's house, then at his workshop, then at the house where Travis's BMW sat in Frank's set. Frank met her at the door. Hi, Dad. Hi, sweetheart. They stood there awkward until Martha pushed past Frank. Come in, honey. It's freezing. I'll make coffee. Inside, at Martha's kitchen table, Frank told Amy everything. The divorce papers over Meatloaf, the stolen money, Travis, the forged signatures, Pete Garrison selling him out, all of it. Amy listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Why didn't you call me? Didn't want to drag you into this. I'm already in it, Dad. That's my inheritance they're stealing. She pulled out her laptop. I've been doing research since I got that letter. Travis Vreeland, or Connor, or whatever his real name is, he's done this before, 3 times that I found. Always the same pattern. Martha leaned forward. Did you find the women he targeted? 2 of them. One won't talk. The other, Amy clicked to an email. Agreed to a phone call. She's willing to testify if we can build a case. Something shifted in Frank's chest. Not hope exactly, but not surrender either. There's something else, Amy said. She pulled papers from her bag. I went through the attic yesterday. Mom's storage boxes. Found these. Credit card statements, casino receipts, online gambling deposits, going back 12 years. Dad, did you know? Frank looked at the statements, his handwriting on a yellow legal pad paperclipped to the top. L's debt as of Jan 2024. 2024, $183,470. I knew. Amy's eyes filled. You've been covering for her all this time. She's your mother. And you're my father, her voice cracked. All those times I thought you didn't care. You were working doubles, missing my recitals, never coming to visit. I was keeping things together. I know that now. God, Dad, I'm so sorry. Martha set coffee mugs down. The question is what we do next. I have an idea, Amy said, but you're not going to like it. She explained. They couldn't prove fraud without catching Travis in the act. They needed him to try something else, something traceable, recorded, undeniable. So we give him an opportunity, Amy said. Dad, you offer to settle, sign over everything, but you insist on one meeting, all of us together, you, Mom, Travis, me, Pete Garrison, to finalize everything. And then? Then we record it, get Travis to admit what he's doing, get Mom to slip up, something we can take to the state police, not the local cops. Frank shook his head. That's entrapment. It's not entrapment if they're already committing crimes. It's just documentation. Martha was nodding. It could work. Or it could blow up in our faces for Frank said. Dad. Amy reached across the table, put her hand on his. First time she'd touched him in 5 years. You've been quiet your whole life. You've been careful. You've done everything right. And where'd it get you? Sleeping in a workshop, losing everything to people who don't deserve it. My mother made her choices. You don't owe her your silence anymore. The words hung there. Frank looked at his daughter, looked at Martha, 2 women fighting for him harder than he'd fought for himself. Okay, he said. Set up the meeting. That night, Frank couldn't sleep. He lay in Martha's spare room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what they were planning. His whole life he'd played it safe. Kept his head down, avoided conflict. It's how he'd survived his father, survived the factory, survived 30 years of marriage to a woman who'd been lying the whole time. But safe hadn't saved him. Maybe it was time to stop being safe. Through the window, he could see his house, lights on, Travis and Linda in there, planning how to divide what was left of everything Frank had built. Frank got up, dressed, went down to Martha's garage where his tools were stored, found what he was looking for, the socket set his father had left him, opened the case. Inside, wrapped in an old shop rag, was something he'd hidden 40 years ago, his father's flask. Silver, dented, engraved with initials worn almost smooth. Frank had sworn he'd never drink like his father did, had kept the flask as a reminder. He held it now, in the dark garage, this piece of a man he'd spent his whole life trying not to become. Then he put it back, closed the case. He wasn't his father. Never would be. Tomorrow they'd set the trap. And Frank Drummond, 68 years old, was done being quiet. The meeting was set for Valentine's Day. Frank chose the date himself. Figured if Linda wanted irony, he'd give it to her. Pete Garrison's office, 10 o'clock. Pete had sounded surprised when Frank called, said he was ready to be reasonable. "I'm glad you're seeing sense, Frank. This is for the best." Frank didn't argue, just confirmed the time. Amy spent 2 days preparing. She had recording devices, small ones, legal in Indiana for single-party consent, one in her purse, one in her coat pocket, backup on her phone. "We just need them to talk," she said, "to say what they're really doing. Travis brags, Mom justifies. We stay quiet and let them hang themselves." The morning of, Frank put on his good shirt, the blue one Linda had bought him years back, shaved careful, looked at himself in Martha's bathroom mirror, 68 years old, face lined from factory work and worry, hair more gray than brown, but his eyes were clear. He looked like a man with a plan. Martha drove them. Amy in back, manila folder in her lap, everything they'd found, the evidence they wouldn't show unless they needed to. Pete's office was on Main Street, second floor above the insurance agency. The heat was broken. Everyone kept their coats on. Frank could see his breath. Linda and Travis were already there. She looked nervous. He looked cocky, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. "Frank," Linda said, "thank you for coming." "Wouldn't miss it." Pete cleared his throat. "So, I've drawn up final settlement papers. Frank, you're agreeing to sign over the house and split the pension 60-40 in Linda's favor. In exchange, you keep the Mustang and your personal effects. Linda's dropping any claim to your Social Security." "That's the deal," Travis said. "Fair and square." Frank nodded slowly. "Before I sign, I got a question." "Sure," Pete said. "How long you been working with them?" Pete blinked. "I'm working for you, Frank. This is the emails you sent Travis. About me being unstable, about expediting this." Frank pulled out his phone, showed the screenshot. "When'd you decide I was the problem?" Pete's face went red. "That was taken out of context." "Was it?" Amy spoke up. "Because it looks like you've been coordinating with them, sharing confidential information about your own client." "Who are you?" "His daughter, Amy Drummond, attorney at law." She wasn't a lawyer, but said it smooth as silk. "Colorado bar, and I'm very interested in filing an ethics complaint if you don't start talking straight." Travis sat forward. "Look, we don't need drama here. Old man, just sign the papers and we're done." "Here's the thing," Frank said. "I'm not signing." Linda's face went pale. "Frank, you agreed." "I changed my mind." He looked at Travis. "How many times you done this? This exact con? Find a woman with a husband who's got money, move in, drain the accounts. How many?" Travis laughed. "Man, you're paranoid." "Am I? Connor Vreeland, that's your real name. 3 bankruptcies, restraining orders in Tennessee and Florida. Want me to keep going?" The room went quiet. Travis's smile died. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Amy opened the folder. "We can prove a lot. Forged signature on the HELOC. That's fraud. Wire transfers without authorization. More fraud. And this?" She slid papers across. "Testimony from Rebecca Marsh, Tennessee. You did the same thing to her husband 2 years ago. She's willing to testify." Travis looked at Linda, really looked at her, and Frank saw it. The power shift. Travis wasn't in control anymore. "This is harassment," Travis said, standing up. "I don't have to listen to this." "Sit down," Amy said, "or we call the state police right now. They're very interested in talking to you." Travis sat. Linda was crying, quiet tears, mascara running. "Frank, please." "How long?" Frank asked her. "How long you been planning this?" She wouldn't look at him. 18 months, Martha said from the doorway. Nobody'd heard her come in. I've got the receipts, the LLC you two formed, the fake business account, all of it. Linda broke first. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said, voice small. I had debts. So many debts. The gambling, I couldn't stop, and Travis said he could help. Help by robbing me? He said we'd split it, start over somewhere, but then he wanted more and more, and I... She looked up, eyes desperate. Frank, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Travis stood up fast. Shut up, Linda. No. She was crying harder now. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You want to go to jail? Because that's where this is heading if you... I already called them, Martha said. She held up her phone. State Police, Detective Morrison, told him everything. He's on his way. Travis's face went white. He looked at the door, looked at Frank, looked at Pete. This is a setup. It's justice, Frank said quietly. Travis tried for the door. Amy blocked him. Move. Sit down, Connor. Or Travis. Or whatever you're calling yourself today. For a second, Frank thought Travis might push past her, thought he might have to step in, bad knee and all. But something in Amy's face, steel that reminded Frank of himself, made Travis back down. He sat. Pete Garrison cleared his throat. I think I should call my own lawyer. Probably should, Amy said. 20 minutes later, Detective Morrison arrived with a uniformed officer. Travis tried to talk his way out, said this was all a misunderstanding, said Linda was confused, said Frank was just a bitter old man making things up. Morrison listened. Then he pulled out handcuffs. Connor Vreeland, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Travis didn't stay silent. Yelled the whole way down the stairs about lawyers and lawsuits and how this wouldn't stick. The officer stayed with Linda. Morrison said she could cooperate or she could be charged too. Her choice. She chose to cooperate. In Pete's cold office, Linda told them everything. The gambling addiction that started 10 years back, meeting Travis, Connor, at a casino in Michigan, how he'd promised to help her win it all back, then offered a better way. The fake business, the plan to drain Frank's accounts and disappear. I didn't want to hurt you, she said to Frank. I just wanted out, wanted to feel alive again instead of invisible. Frank looked at this woman he'd been married to for 30 years, looked at her crying, broken, desperate. You were never invisible, Linda. You just weren't looking. They worked out a plea deal over the next week. Linda would pay back what she could. Probation, no jail time. Frank didn't want her locked up, just away. Just away. The house went back to Frank. The accounts got frozen, then sorted. He'd lost money, legal fees, what Travis had already spent, but he'd keep the pension, the house, his tools. The Mustang. Travis faced charges in 4 states. Last Frank heard, he was looking at 5 to 10 years. Pete Garrison retired early, closed his practice. Frank heard he moved to Florida. Roy Clemens, the bank manager who'd twisted his wedding ring and done nothing, stopped by the workshop one evening. Brought beer Frank didn't drink, and an apology Frank didn't quite accept. I should have flagged it, Roy said. Should have helped. Yeah, you should have. I was scared. The money they offered, my daughter's college fund is empty. I thought, I know what you thought. Frank looked at him. We all make choices, Roy. Now you gotta live with yours. Roy left the beer. Frank poured it out in the snow. March came with a thaw. Frank finished the Mustang on the first warm Sunday. Amy handed him tools without him asking. She'd remembered from when she was a girl, helping in the workshop while Linda complained about the noise. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. Some conversations happened in the passing of wrenches, in the quiet work of restoration. The carburetor went in perfect. First try. 42 years in a machine shop taught you that, if you do the work right, the pieces go where they belong. Frank wiped his hands on the shop rag, same one he'd used since 1987, worn soft as flannel. Through the window, he could see Martha's kitchen light. She'd be making Sunday dinner soon. Pot roast, always pot roast. Amy would be there. She'd moved into the guest room temporarily, said she was taking a sabbatical. Frank knew better. She was making sure he didn't disappear into silence again. Dad? Amy was at the driver's door. Want to take her for a spin? They drove to church, windows down, engine purring true. People waved from their porches. Someone called out, Good to see you, Frank. He waved back. In the church parking lot, Amy turned to him. You okay? Getting there. That's not the same as okay. No, but it's honest. She smiled. Her mother's smile, but warmer. Honesty's a good start. Inside, Frank sat in his usual pew, fourth row, left side, aisle seat. Reverend Patterson preached on new beginnings, about how sometimes you have to lose everything to find what matters. After service, Frank stood in the parking lot with his daughter beside him and Martha walking over with her casserole dish. The Mustang gleamed in the spring sun, 9 years to build it, 3 months to almost lose everything. But he'd kept what mattered, not the house, not the money, his dignity, his daughter, his ability to stand upright when the world said lie down. Frank wasn't healed, wasn't sure he ever would be completely, but he was standing, and sometimes that's enough. He poured himself coffee from Martha's thermos, still that cracked Marine Corps mug, still holding strong, and thought about his father, about silence, about the difference between keeping peace and keeping yourself. His father had taught him that silence was survival. Frank had learned different. Silence was a choice, and so was speaking up. In the distance, church bells rang. A robin sang from the fence post. Amy laughed at something Martha said. Frank Drummond, 68 years old, took a sip of coffee and let the warm sun touch his face. Life goes on, and so did he. If this story meant something to you, remember, respect's earned in quiet moments and proven in hard ones. Stand up for those who stood up for you. And if you're carrying someone else's weight in silence, maybe it's time to set it down. The ones who built this country with their hands deserve better than to disappear without a fight.